here, and welcome again to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Happy summer solstice, boys. Longest day of the year. 16 hours of sunlight. Hope you're going to enjoy the long day, Steve.
That means the first day of summer, Rob.
Yeah. Feels like the longest June I've ever had, too. This is crazy when you think about it.
There's still like 10 days left in June.
I know. This is wild. Like, just how much has happened in the month of June. This is supposed to be our boring time when we're, like, scrambling to come up with just filler content. No need for that this year.
You know, the Earth's tilt was such at 10 a.m. that there was maximum exposure to the sun.
Thank you, Dr. Google.
I heard it on the radio, Sean.
Right.
The Earth's
They
tilt.
probably got it off Google.
The Earth's tilt maximized sun exposure at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. was as bright as it'll get throughout the calendar year.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Write a column on that. See how many hits it gets.
The more you
All
know.
right. Well,
0 for 8 doubleheader, as you would call it. When I write a bad column, when it doesn't get many hits, Sean calls it an 0 for 8 doubleheader.
Where you work hard, you grind it out, and
you had one.
You're a
that
no-show.
We won't get into what it was, but it seemed like a great one.
Great idea.
It was like 2,000 views. It was
And Sean gave me the, God, I hate to tell you, buddy, but that was an 0 for 8 doubleheader.
baseball analogy if you're not familiar. But Nebraska, guys, on a run of commits. And it's interesting when you look at kind of how things have played out. Landon Davidson, the latest one. Donovan Jones, we're expecting to happen. We're taping this show Wednesday. We think his commit's going to happen sometime today. So if you count Donovan Jones into that mix, they've had 6 commits since June 11th. All 6 took part in Nebraska's camp. All 6 were offered their scholarships at Nebraska's camp. All 6, Camden Coe did not take his official visit, but the other group all took an official visit. They're all committed. It has been a different approach for Nebraska with how they've recruited and how they've built this month of June, how they've built this class. In fact, I don't think we've ever seen it like this before, where this much emphasis is put on the camps. I mean, it almost reminds you back in like the 90s when I was in high school. I remember kids would, everybody would go to the Tom Osborne Husker football camp or the Frank Solich Husker football school. And you would go down there and work out, and then you get offered by Osborne or Solich, and you would commit. I mean, this is what it feels like with how Nebraska has built this class over this month of June.
Yeah, in those camps, there's serious evaluation going on. We've seen it with our own eyes. Robin, Sean, myself, Abby. You see literally kids getting timed into 40 by the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
It's intense. I mean, it is. That's what strikes me about it. Like if Matt Rhule, if you're a kid and Matt Rhule calls you over and he has a stopwatch in his hand and says run a 40, there's some pressure in that. And I'm supposed the coaches want to see that too. How's he respond to that? Mm-hmm. And these kids that have gotten offers, obviously they responded well.
Head coaches aren't always present at the camps. I mean, Scott Frost would kind of come down at the very end of camps, make a speech. He ran when Donovan Raiola was there, Dylan Raiola was there, he ran his workout for him. That was the most involved in 5 years that I saw Scott Frost at camp. But like Lane Kiffin, I was at a satellite camp where there were countless D1 type level kids at this campus working out at FAU, and Lane Kiffin showed up. It appeared to be hungover with sunglasses on.
Easy.
Well, I know he went out on his boat with the Adidas representatives the night before, hung out, and he'd come in and make one lap around the camp and then go back up to his office.
Wasn't he roped off from the media?
Yeah, he could.
He was the ropes.
You kind of would think like at FAU, Lane Kiffin at a camp would be like, "Hey, what's up, Lane?" I mean, he wasn't that approachable. Like you couldn't just go up to Lane Kiffin. Now Monty,
you need a ticket for the Lane train.
When Monty, his father, when we told him we were from Nebraska,
yes,
he talked our ear off every time we'd go down there.
Really? Anyway, this approach is certainly interesting.
Different.
I mean, what you're seeing is offers to kids who don't have a lot of offers or don't have a lot of high profile offers. I mean, Donovan Jones
for different reasons.
Yeah. No, it's not. I mean, I'm not being judgmental here. They just don't have a lot of offers. Donovan Jones, you mentioned. Wyoming and South Dakota are his most prestigious offers. Braylon Prude, it was Lindenwood in Eastern Illinois. Now, what that shows is it shows Matt Rhule's staff is very confident in their own evaluation abilities. And when Sean talks about this being a different approach, Rob, you know what? Most people know what he's talking about. For a lot of years, it felt like if there wasn't 4 or 3 stars attached, high 3 stars, then don't bother. And these guys don't care. They don't seem to care at all. Not that they're not going after high-profile players, because they are. They're going after them too. But the camp thing has been kind of a separate approach.
Well, this was recruiting pre-internet. Like, fans now kind of think they have it all figured out because recruiting is more trackable.
Right.
And
right.
I wrote this week in our chat. I mean, Nebraska for the last 15 or 20 years has tried to find the prettiest 3-star or maybe a 4-star guy with some flaws that a place like Florida or California lets out of their state for whatever reason. And those are the guys they've been getting here. And has it worked?
Not really. No. I mean,
at a sustainable level has not worked.
Not really.
So what's jumped out to me is I think Brian Munson counted there's been 18 offers that have come directly from in-person evaluation at these camps.
That's right, Rob.
And like you said, a big majority of them are guys that are under the radar, to say the least. So what stood out to me is the emphasis on those in-person evaluations and how much of a priority seeing these guys in person from the staff with their own eyes and evaluating them for themselves. Not just what recruiting service scouts or whatever think about them. Is what do they think about them?
Right.
The other thing is they don't care about positions. Like, I know there's been a lot of kind of hand-wringing about the number of defensive backs that have been offered.
6.
Just because they're a defensive back in high school, that doesn't mean they're going to be a defensive back in Nebraska. Right. And I think we've already seen this staff has a formula, and they don't look at what a player is now and say, what this player is now, how's it going to fit into what we're doing? It's what is this player going to be in 2 or 3 years after we get him in our program, develop him, get him stronger, bigger, faster. I think so. That is a different thing to where you don't necessarily look at, well, they have this many D-line, they have this many linebackers, this many defensive backs. I think you look at them as they're all kind of athletes at this point. And once they get on campus, that's when they eventually find their true home at Nebraska.
And the thing with the formula that's important is the measurables, the testing. And here's a look. I just want to kind of fire through starting at Camden Cook to kind of give you an idea of the run that they're on here with these camps. Camden Cook came to the punter kickers camp. Nebraska kind of knew he had some ability. Then they watched him punt, no brainer. They offered him, and you got to get Ed Foley coached special teams for the Carolina Panthers for the last few years. He obviously knows what good punters look like because he's been at the highest level the last few years coaching them. No brainer. Braylon Prude was in Houston. We watched that offer play out right in front of us.
Yeah.
Then he took his official visit. I mean, it happened quick. He got his offer. Steve, we're back at the hotel, riding in that lounge in the Houston Airport Marriott, and he's like, "I'm visiting Nebraska." I mean, that's how quick they moved that one. Then he committed. Jake Peters comes to camp, 3-sport athlete at Iowa. Cedar Falls, Iowa kid, explosive. Munson has a great theory that this could end up being a D lineman as well as an O line. He's got the potential to play both. Callan Barta out of Topeka, Kansas, played on the state championship 5A Kansas high school basketball team as a sophomore. Seaman, not known for football, but athletically got great numbers. Great, he's very, very explosive kid. They were very impressed with him. Evan Taylor visited. Now, this was not a camp offer. Evan Taylor. He visited campus though, and they offered him, got him on, and he committed. And then Landon Davidson was a camp offer out of Colorado. So that's kind of a good snapshot. And on every new commit they get, we do a breakdown like this to kind of timeline, what's going on. And I'm big on the dates because you can kind of see the runs that happen in recruiting. There's always kind of a little spring run. Then there's always a June run, and then there's going to be a December type of run, probably more than likely.
June run not over.
June run far from. I mean, that 14 could be pushing 20 by our show next week.
Okay, interesting. Back to the DB thing that Robin referred to. They have 6. Well, if Donovan Jones verbally commits, that would be 6 DBs in this class. Now, I agree with Robin. I mean, some of those guys will end up being playing closer to the line of scrimmage, maybe linebackers. Who knows what they're going to play? But right now, 6. Sean, how many more could they go?
Well, I can tell you, Rex Guthrie out of Colorado,
right,
who was offered this week at camp. They love him. He's visiting this weekend.
He's a 2024 kid.
And I believe they will take Rex Guthrie this weekend too. So
he's another example of an under the radar. His other offers, committable offers, are Wyoming and Penn. The staff doesn't care.
And Rex Guthrie had 120 tackles, but he runs 4.5.
120 tackles is a good number.
He runs 4.5. You know, somebody I was talking to over there said at the camp, he just had like snot bubbles. And he was just, I mean, they loved his intensity, the way he, I mean, just, I mean, I just gift myself, but
you did. That's okay. Twice.
I just made myself a gift.
Yeah. But no, I got you, Sean. That would be 7.
Rex Guthrie.
That would be number 7. So yeah, I mean,
yeah. And so like with that, I mean, you're talking about safeties, you're talking about rovers, corners,
field corners, boundary corners.
Yeah. I mean, so like a DB can mean like 7 different things, especially in Tony White's defense with how versatile it
Rover is another position that's added back there now. I mean, come on, it's a 3-3-5, and it's sort of self-explanatory.
45% of the players are on the back end.
Yeah. 5 defensive backs all the time, so.
All right. Well, we're going to continue this conversation. When we come back, a lot of development on the in-state front, particularly at Bellevue West. That story has taken quite a turn over the last week. We're going to talk about that with Davon Hall, Isaiah McMorris, and that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett as taking you through the back end of the month of June here. This is a big week, guys. It's the final week of the recruiting summer period. Then things go dead. There is 1 week in late July you're allowed to bring visitors in, and that's a hit and miss week for a lot of programs. So really Sunday is kind of when everyone's out of the office and on their vacations. But this weekend there's a lot going on. Nebraska, I think, expected around 14 official visitors. Then they hosted 3 or 4 more during the middle of the week. So it's been a near 20 visitor week. But the big development is at Bellevue West. Obviously, Isaiah McMorris, Daniel Kalen were going to visit Nebraska all along this weekend. Davon Hall, that story has kind of swung back and forth. He was set up to come to Nebraska, but said he was going to go camp at Tennessee. And then he goes to camp at Tennessee, runs 22 miles per hour, by the way. They time miles per hour there. That would be the second fastest time on the Vol roster right now, according to Austin Price of On3, VolQuest.com, and doesn't get an offer.
He didn't get an offer
for 2 weeks. Then it didn't look like Nebraska was going to take Davon Hall. So Davon Hall last Friday goes to Kansas State, visits Kansas State. Davon Hall's father is at the Nebraska camp with the younger son watching him compete at Nebraska's camp. Somewhere on that Friday, he crossed paths with Matt Rhule, talked to the staff, and things have kind of taken a turn where all of a sudden K-State maybe was going to get Davon Hall. Now all of a sudden his situation at Nebraska appears to have come back. But in the meantime, Tennessee came in with an offer when the Nebraska thing came back around. But I think Tennessee might have been too late. If Tennessee offered Davon Hall a week ago, they have the guy. He's theirs.
Davon Hall, 6'2", 190.
Offered as a freshman in high school by Scott Frost's staff.
62 catches last season, 974 yards, 11 TDs. Now, he has run a 10.62.
And he's like a 6'11", 6'10 high jumper.
Oh, boy. 6'11". Is he really 6'11"?
Yeah, 6'10", I think. 6'10".
God, 10.62, 6'11". This would be a sizable get, and it has been an interesting recruiting story. Kansas State must have thought, what is going on? How could we get this kid right now?
Well, he hadn't returned their calls for 2 years. And Iowa was in the same boat, the communication with Iowa. I mean, I think Davon Hall in his heart and his mind thought that he was going to go to the SEC.
SEC.
A&M, Mississippi, Arkansas, possibly Tennessee. I think you find out real fast how the recruiting process works. There are offers, and then there are committable offers. And not all offers are created the same. An offer might just mean an invite to kind of come to the party.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you're going to get asked to join the party,
Right.
join the team.
Right.
And, he was trying to communicate with a lot of these SEC teams, and he wasn't getting any correspondence back from them. Then all of a sudden he had nothing.
Yeah.
And that's when he goes down to Kansas State. Then things have taken a turn with Nebraska, and then Tennessee comes in. I mean, recruiting guys is nuts.
Yeah, it is. But what's very evident is that Davon Hall can play. And there'll be someone will lock him down, and they'll have a good receiver on their hands. And it'll probably be Nebraska is what we're looking at here.
I remember when I covered his very first high school game as a true freshman. Sean sent me out there and said, "Hey, keep an eye on this Davon Hall
2020,
guy."
right?
Yeah,
2020.
See what he's all about. And I think like on the first or second drive, he hits like a 60-yard TD down the sideline
As a freshman,
you're just like, whoa. And I talked to him a little bit afterwards, and he said Xavier Betts was like his role model, and so like there's a lot of similarities there in just the terms of, I think, immediate impact that he could have. You saw those flashes from Betts right away, when he first got his taste at Nebraska. And so, I mean, if Nebraska ends up getting him, they have that type of player in Davon Hall. I mean, he's one of those guys that was built for the big stage. He has all the athleticism, all the intangibles. And, if he can put it all together, I think that could be one of the biggest in-state coups that Nebraska's gotten in a while.
Yeah, and he'll put up numbers again this year. That's an air raid offense at Bellevue West. They throw the hell out of it. They have some good receivers, but I'd say, Sean, are their three best Davon Hall, McMorris, and that Jermaine Green? Is that their three best? Are you with me?
Well, they got the two main, McMorris and Hall.
I mentioned them, yeah.
And then Jermaine Green, and then Keith as well.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about, Kenton Keith's son.
Percy
Caprice Keith. Caprice Keith.
Yeah. I mean, they've got guys. Omaha South's best linebacker that led the state in tackles. Sheard is transferring there. His dad went to Gross with me. Jason Sheard was his name. And they're getting some other guys in their program. Will Anderson transferred there. I mean, that game against Westside, we're going to be in Boulder, by the way. That Friday night, those two teams will play. That's going to be an unbelievable high school matchup of the number one versus number two teams.
Bellevue West has serious talent at receiver, and McMorris actually, his numbers were better than Hall's last year.
Yeah, McMorris set the record for Class A last year.
90 catches
in receiving yards.
1,297.
That was a Nebraska Class A record.
So he's the smaller of the two. He's 6 foot 190.
Perfect slot guy.
He plays basketball too. I mean, and he plays on the state championship team. I mean, he was a player.
So he was at the camp 2 weekends ago, Nebraska's camp. And at one point, I think he was a late addition to the roster because he wasn't originally expected to be there. Well, anyway, they're going through the workouts, and they do a little breakout session to where McMorris is basically running an individual workout with Jeff Sims throwing him passes and Daniel Kalin, who wasn't even participating in the camp. He was just there. They're running them through routes, and it seemed like a very productive camp that I think probably accelerated that recruitment quite a bit.
Yeah, probably.
And he was a guy that was dealing with Oklahoma and USC, and he was kind of put on the back burner with those programs. I mean, he just never had the green light from either program, and that's what happens. And Robin, you've seen in basketball, those top programs, you find out when there's a spot, they have certain people they want for that spot, and they're not going to let you just take their spot until they know the people they have over you tell them no.
And let's face it, the receiver position it's got to be highly competitive in that recruiting world because there's a lot of them. There's 400 good receivers.
Well, there's like 64 stars a year.
Yeah. Okay. 64 stars.
Something crazy like that. It's like that many per year.
Right.
It's the easiest position to find 4-star players at.
Right.
So, compare that to finding like a D lineman.
Look at tight end.
It's night and day.
Look at tight end. That's why people are going to Ainsworth, Nebraska to recruit Carter Nelson, or they're going to Kansas City to get Jaden Riddell. I mean, the best tight ends happen to be in this part of the country a lot of the years.
Interesting, Sean.
Where Georgia and Alabama are flying their planes into Ainsworth, driving by Big John's. Remember Big John's?
I do remember Big John's, yes. Okay, the question I have for you, Sean, is how many of these visitors this weekend are D linemen? They got to start getting the bigs. They need to start getting bigs. They got one D lineman in the class, which sits at 15 right now. One D lineman in the 2024 class. By the way, that's Ashton Murphy, and he weighs 242 pounds. Wow. Now, when are they going to start bringing in some 300-pounders, Sean?
Well, they had some guys in the first weekend that came in, and that's I think you got to go back to the June 3rd weekend for Nebraska when they had the linemen on campus. I mean, I'm going down the list here to make sure I get all the names. Joseph Anderson is an edge guy that they're waiting on.
Okay.
That it felt like he was going to be a commit.
How about an interior?
Carlin Jones came in 6'4", 260.
That's interior.
It's hard to know where he's at, but he was on that opening weekend.
Yes, that's right.
But you're right. I mean, I think that's where the questions remain, are those heavier bodies on the front. Now, they got a lot of guys from a year ago, so that their numbers have kind of cycled better. And Jason Machacek has moved over. They call him Shake Shack, by the way.
Shake Shack.
Shake Shack.
Yeah, I noticed he had a defensive jersey on in the camp, and I should have reported that.
He's
to you.
defense now.
Yeah.
I mean, so they've really
Shake
helped
Shack.
the overall health of those numbers. Getting him, and you got Riley Van Poppel, Princewell.
Right, Princewell. Just say Princewell.
Even Malin.
Cam Lenhart.
Let's find how many different ways we're going to say.
Yeah.
Like Megan needs to reel every attempt that we've had.
Yeah. Cam Lenhart's in that conversation.
Maverick Noonan.
There's others. Now, I mean, but you don't want that to become a recurring conversation. They have to be big in this league. You have to be big and strong and tough up front. So that's something to watch. And right now,
well, Jacob Smith is another.
Yeah, but Sean, that's an edge
guy.
Rusher. I mean, he's coming. That's not.
But
that's
how many? Okay,
I'm talking about Malik Collins. I'm not talking about guy coming off
in a
the edge.
3-3-5. How many of those guys are on the field?
Well, you need. I mean, I don't know. It depends on what the opponent's doing, Sean. You're not in the Big 12. This isn't the air raid conference. Okay, so how many games you got to win with 230-pound edge guys? Answer the question.
Yeah, you sound like a guy that does a radio show with a defensive coordinator.
Well, we're in the Big 10. You got to remember what league you're in, right? Now, you named off a bunch of guys: Maverick Noonan, Cam Lenhart, Princewell. Yeah, those guys. There's a place for them. But on first down against Michigan, is that where you're winning with?
To answer your question, though, there are no big bodies coming in other than Ashton Murphy, who's already committed to Nebraska. So
I'm just saying.
The numbers on the D-line definitely are a question.
And I talked to a former player today who's his biggest concern is they're a little light up front. Mm-hmm. Light in numbers, not necessarily light in weight, but light in numbers. And those teams will just. What do you think Minnesota will do if you are a little vulnerable up front? What do you think they're going to do?
They're going to try to run it for 4 yards a carry, and just
control clock.
Have 7-minute possessions.
Yeah.
Oh, remember that would just madden Scott Frost when they would just chunk out those one possession quarters on Nebraska.
Oh, yeah.
Nebraska one drive in the first quarter,
right? So that's something to watch going forward, Sean.
Speaking of size on the lines, Brian Munson mentioned this in his 3-and-out column.
3-and-out,
talking about the height of offensive line recruits and how they're a lot shorter than they used to be. And didn't say it was a bad thing one way or another, but
they're recruiting.
It's a trend with Rhule and the staff's recruiting that they're maybe focusing more on mobility and agility,
bend,
and being able to bend than they are being 6'8", 320 pounds.
Let me tell you this: how has it worked out for Nebraska recruiting a bunch of trees?
Yep.
Some of the lowest ranked pass pro blocking.
Just look at those tackle grades
in the country.
I just thought it was interesting. That was an interesting point, Brian.
Those are those are interior guys usually that Brian's talking about, right? Gibson Pyle's got a little size, but Jake Peters 6'3". Then who was the other one they brought in, Sean?
No,
it's okay, but no, that's the thing.
Grant Bricks is coming in this weekend from Iowa, and that's the number one player in Iowa, 6'6", 280. That's a name to watch. He could play interior or tackle, but I don't, like I said, I don't think you need a bunch of 6'10" guys. Rhule kind of told me one time, he's like, in the NFL, there are no linemen that are 6'9". I think the sweet spot is 6'5" to 6'7".
He said what?
You don't see linemen in the league that are 6'9".
6'9".
I mean, it's hard to bend and move at a high level at that point.
Yeah. When you're going up against that elite level edge speed, you gotta be able to move.
Oh yeah,
it can't be, like you said, it can't be a tree out there. So you're seeing a shift, I think.
How many times have we seen Nebraska's tackles just get drag raced by on the edge?
They don't even lay a hand on the guy.
And we're not talking about exotic
really
pass
sad.
moves here. I mean, we're talking about just a simple
Just straight speed rush.
Right.
like the Rutgers game.
Yeah.
I mean, the Rutgers game, I felt like I was watching 2 drag racing cars come off the end for an entire game on Casey Thompson.
Casey felt like that too.
And then a bulldozer decided to come up the middle too.
I think Casey's nodding if he's watching.
It was like 2 dudes and then a bulldozer up the middle.
Yeah, that was great. And Casey was getting mummy wrapped at halftime. Remember, he was late coming out. We didn't even know if he was coming out.
Yes.
Then he came
We were
out.
concerned for his safety at that point. It's like, do you pull him out just to save his life?
Well, that was the game too. Like Mark Whipple, like couldn't even walk. I mean, they used golf carts to get Mark Whipple around. I mean, that was a late night in New Jersey.
What a time.
The Nissan Titan truck night.
I think we're gonna go with Titan on that one.
You're back to Titan
We're
now?
back to Titan.
Okay,
Sean.
Ramir.
Yeah, what a season. What a
Right.
season.
When we come back, speaking of seasons, Nebraska softball is going to have a big one.
Wow.
Jordan Bahl effect. It's in full effect. We're going to talk more about that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. Before we get into some Jordy Bahl talk for Nebraska softball, this segment, Steve Sipple of the Husker Online Show, is brought to you by
Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Sean, if you're looking for a new vehicle, go for a new experience at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors is one of the Midwest's only dealerships with all the major brands in one spot. So finding your new Chevrolet, GMC, Hummer, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram has never been easier. So start your new experience today at LarsonMotorGroup.com. That's LarsonMotorGroup.com or at Larson Motors in Nebraska City. Larson Motors, real people, real deals.
Have you test drove that Hummer yet?
I have not. Robin thought that would be a good idea. It might. It's a little, I'm a little more low profile.
See, I warmed up to the Jeep idea, like, you know,
the Rubicon,
the top down,
this full midlife crisis Jeep mode.
So, okay, now we're gonna do that, Sean. I'm in midlife crisis.
It's blasting hair metal. Yeah,
I don't know.
Be
We'll
the
see.
dude
No
at the
shirt,
college, the guy at the College World
jeans,
Series pulling up in his Jeep at the
Don't
tailgate
you-
party with a bunch of 22-year-old girls getting.
Well,
caught.
hello. I
Acid
do like
wash
the idea.
jeans.
I do like the idea of going down to Nebraska City, getting out of the rat race a little bit.
Yeah.
Well,
Real people.
Let's talk some Nebraska softball. Jordy Bahl,
Jordy Bahl.
or as you would say, Jordine Bahl.
It's a real name.
Is it Jordine? Do we know that?
It might be Jordan.
I thought it was always
Just
Jordan.
completely made
It's J. Okay. Let's be clear on something. It's Jordyn, and
Jordan.
whenever I read it, I think Jordine.
It's kind of like the name Sean. I've had people say Scene. And
Yeah.
I just say, who the hell have you ever met in your
Scene.
life named Scene? I want to know who they are because that name doesn't even exist.
It's Jordan Bahl.
All
Better
right.
get it right because she's taken over the state.
Mm-hmm.
And she had her press conference this week. And to kind of put it into perspective, I mean, we look at the views that our YouTube channel gets on stuff and keep track of that stuff. Her video that we posted is going to break over 10,000 views, which, you know, put it in perspective, like a men's basketball player interview video is lucky to get 1,000.
Or a Matt Rhule.
A Matt Rhule video will get over 10,000.
Yeah.
But, you know, her views on this opening press conference, and a lot of that's opening, you know, Oklahoma fans.
Okay.
I mean, she
was 44-2 with a 1.00 ERA at Oklahoma. That's not bad. 2-time All-American. More perspective. As of Tuesday afternoon, this is startling to me. As of Tuesday afternoon, 2,538 people were on the wait list for softball season tickets. That's on the wait list. Bullen Stadium seats 2,500.
I was gonna say, do they even have that many seats?
Seats 2,500. The wait list for softball season tickets, 2,538. Perspective. Last season, there were 365 season ticket holders. Now there are 2,500 on the wait list.
if it was legal, Trev Alberts should just write her a check. I mean,
it's almost
it's
legal.
pretty much legal.
You could find a way to do that.
Right.
A lot of other people are going to be writing her checks, though. I mean, I saw that she's got a signing appearance already set up. And I mean, what a home run this is appearing to be for the Nebraska athletic department, for Jordan Bahl and her family. And she's more than a pitcher, guys. I mean, she can hit, play the field. I mean, she's not just a pitcher.
Mainly a pitcher, though. And she's here's the other beauty about Jordan Bahl. Here's the beauty. And we talk about this in football. We talk about in basketball. We talk about it. She wants to be a Husker.
Like, she always wanted to.
Yeah, she was homesick. And she was homesick her first year at Oklahoma, and she thought it would get better. I watched her press conference. She thought it would get better. It didn't. It got worse in the second year. And she said something really, I mean, she said a lot of things that were pretty intelligent. One of them was, in order to be the best player she could be, she wanted to feel good about everything. And coming home, she'll feel better about everything. Now, which begs the question, can she raise her game to another level? Mm-hmm. I mean, she struck out. This really gets your attention. She had 397 strikeouts in 288 innings. Okay, she's striking out 1.5 players per inning almost.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, so when we talk about her in such glowing terms, we're not talking about we're not basing anything on projection. We're basing on what she's done.
Proven at the highest level.
Yeah, what she's done.
Like, sometimes you don't even need an offense around you if you have that kind of pitcher.
Yeah, Rhonda will not. Hopefully, she won't take that mindset too far.
No, but you could win a lot of 1-0 games.
Yeah, you can.
And we obviously, her as a player is a huge deal, but just the ripple effect. And we talked about this a little bit last week, but just having her on board, what that does for Nebraska softball as a program. You just talked about the season ticket sales.
Yeah.
Apparently, Rhonda Ravel's already met with Trev Alberts about expanding the stadium. I mean, just one player is going to make the stadium bigger because they can't accommodate the number of fans that are interested.
It's like a 30 for 30. I mean, this story right now. I mean,
it really is.
I mean, she's already had Jordy Bahl Day at the Omaha Storm Chasers up at Werner Park. I mean, like, she hasn't even thrown a pitch in practice yet, and she's having Jordy Bahl Day at a minor league baseball game.
I think when they play that volleyball match in the stadium, I don't know if they'll do this or not, 91,000 people, they need to, that will be kind of the first opportunity.
Yeah.
Because that's the first sporting event in Lincoln since all this happened. Perfect stage. Female sporting event. You need Nate Rohr just to be like, let's welcome back Jordy Bahl. Just a full crazy Nate Rohr, third down.
It's hurt.
I think you're right. It almost seems
Nate,
odd
I
if
know
they
you're
didn't.
Going to catch. I want you to do that, Nate. If you can pull
Please
this
do.
off, he's all about it.
They should do it. They should do it now. Again, I know I did this the last time, but God, when we have these conversations, I just think, I hope she sort of has a sense of humor about all this, because the pressure seems enormous.
Yeah, think about Scott Frost.
Yeah,
like coming home.
Yes,
I mean, this is like
it has that feel like it can't miss. All right, now, but you guys cover athletics. You cover at a high level. You know how athletics is. There's no guarantees. No guarantees
she
for
was
anybody.
surrounded by some really good players at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Now, is that how much of the drop off is there going to be between Oklahoma's roster and Nebraska's?
Or sometimes, maybe not. Maybe she has a little personal slump or something. I mean, they're just, and we're all doing it. We're all kind of contributing to this. I say it's pressure. Maybe she would say it's not pressure.
I think it's definitely pressure.
She's been the best. I mean, think about high school. Like, she took the Nebraska club team, the Nebraska Gold team, whatever their name was. They won the national title.
Yeah.
A group of Nebraska high school girls won the high school national, like, AAU title. Yeah. I mean, that's the type of player she is. She elevated that group of Nebraska girls to win the thing in the whole country, a state of less than 2 million people.
Yeah, I'm kind of being a snowflake here.
You always have to be kind of I get it. That's your shtick.
Yeah.
We got to be careful here.
Yeah, you got to be careful here.
The pump the brakes guy, the Jordy Bahl guy, the Ramir Johnson guy, the Nissan Teton guy.
You're the one who had problems with the Titan today. You called it the Nissan Teton. Now, she's probably a badass and can handle everything.
Look at her tattoo.
She has a Nebraska tattoo, and she has a pendant that has the state of Nebraska on it too. She loves Nebraska. This is a 30 for 30. She just loves it. She wanted to be here. I mean, for that reason alone, I gravitate toward the story. When I heard her talking about just how much she loves the state, and she always wanted to represent the state, even when she was in Oklahoma. And now she gets the chance to represent her state in this form. How can you not cheer for that?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's extraordinary. We always beg for football players. God, do they want to be here? I mean, do they want to be here? Do they care about being here? You know, what's it mean to them?
To a much lesser extent, it's kind of like Sam Greasel, where you got a hometown kid that came back home. He was all about the program, grew up loving Nebraska basketball. And you saw the impact that had in the culture. And so, to your point, you know, I don't think that this is going to be too big for her. But at Oklahoma, she was a significant piece to their program. At Nebraska, she is the piece. And
You know what would be nice? If one of the recruits they get is a big time hitter, you know, someone who's cranked home runs and someone who's very high profile that can take a little, you know, someone who you look at and go, oh man, yeah, that's a good player too, you know.
Or the second pitcher, because you can't just you need more than one.
Yeah, that would be good too if they get another high profile pitcher.
That's what we talked about with the domino, though, of getting her. You know, how many doors does that open for Nebraska to high level transfers, to elite level recruits?
Would you love to see another high level transfer?
Yeah, someone that's been there, done that, to where you know, it could still be Ball's team, but she's not on an island out there.
Right, 100.
All right.
That was for you.
We got two in there. We got two 100s
that was for
there.
you, Sean.
When we come back, we're going to bring in Grant Hansen via remote for the mailbag. He's stepping in for Abby Hansen or Abby Barmore. They're not married.
Are they married?
Not married. Sorry.
So something I missed
here? News here?
Abby Barmore.
Do they have a child?
When we come back, mailbag time. You're listening to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett. Time for the mailbag, and stepping in for Abby Barmore. I called her Abby Hansen by mistake, but let's welcome in Grant Hansen, who is on his college break right now, one of our great Husker Online intern. Are you working out of your parents' basement, Grant?
Yes, 100%. It is
RSS
seldom used. So I was like, well, I might as well make it a set piece for the Husker Online Show for a moment.
Well, what do you got in the mailbag? Where do you want to start us off at?
Yeah, so out of the top 3 in men's sports, your football, basketball, and baseball, who's going to have the most improved season next year?
Of the top 3 men's sports.
Most improved?
They all theoretically should.
They should.
Yeah, pretty low bars across the board there.
I mean, you got a baseball.
Football's got a very manageable schedule. That's the thing
football
that
needs to get
first.
6, if not 7.
And basketball intently scheduled very light in its non-con, and they bring back a good core, so they should be improved.
I would say baseball's the most. Grant can help us with this because he covers baseball. Baseball's the most unpredictable because we don't really have a great handle on the roster, right, Grant?
Yeah, I think I mentioned in Tunnel Talk, I think last week, but last year they finished with 46 players on the roster. Now you need to cut down to 40. As of now, they're at like 42, I think, with a strong shot at the 2023 who just got out of his national letter of intent. So that would bring them to 43 with probably like a month and a half of active recruiting left. I mean, they could be ready by fall with like 50 plus players on that roster. It's going to be like last year, but even more, I think, in terms of the size.
I'm going with football because of this. Because of the schedule, but also because what they have returning and because of what they brought in, namely Jeff Sims. But there's a lot of, if you look at the defense, there's a lot of talent back there. I get it.
Can they structure it right is the question.
Right. I mean, listen, that's a good defensive backfield. They have a good secondary. Dudes in the secondary. Do they have enough up front is going to be the ongoing question. But I think, and then on the other side, on the flip side, you have Sims. You have all your offensive line coming back. You guys like the running backs. I like the running backs. Receivers, I like them when you add Fedoni into that, you know, the tight end, Thomas Fedoni into that discussion, if you count him. I think I think the football team will be the most improved.
I think basketball too.
I
got a feeling they're gonna make a jump. And again, the bar's very low, so it's all relative.
But you think it's a better than 500 team?
I do.
Well, I like
their schedule.
The thing you'll have to look at as we go forward. I really like the way Fred set up the offense with all the shooters. are they going to play defense? You know, like they did last year. They played defense last year. They did. It was good defense almost all year. Will we see that again?
All right, what do you got next, Grant?
Vegas has Nebraska's win total at 6.5. Is 6 wins a successful season in your eyes?
I think you have to say it is because of where the program's been. I mean, Nebraska right now is not in a position to scoff at 6 wins because they have not gotten 6 wins since 2016. I mean, you think about how many years ago that guys were in 2023.
Oh, no. I'm fully aware. Rob?
Yes, I think it has to be because that's the first step in rebuilding this program is getting to that 500 and beyond mark. So if you get to 500 with 6 wins and you go to a bowl and you snap that bowl-less streak, that's a step forward. And
is that a successful season?
I mean, maybe not for some that want 10 wins and a Big Ten title every year, but I think if you're being realistic about what Nebraska football is right now, to make that jump from a losing program for the last 5-6 years to get to 500, go to a bowl game, have a postseason. Yes, that is successful.
I grudgingly agree. I
don't like it.
I hate.
But I'm just being real.
I hate the conversation, especially as an old.
Yep.
And as an old who remembers distinctly the crowd that used to yell at me, we will never lessen our standards. Well, we have.
Here we are.
Yeah. Clearly we have.
All right, what do you have next, Grant?
Gonna shift gears and go to a hot topic in the recruiting realm lately. Of the recent under the radar commits, who are you the most excited about?
Whew.
Okay.
That's a good question. The one that intrigues me, I guess, is Braylon Prude. Because I just don't think people know much about him, but athletically, he jumps off the page.
6'5", 190.
And he runs a sub 50 in the 400.
49.86. 49.86.
So I'm going to say Braylon Prude is probably the one. I mean, Camden Cook is a punter too. I mean, nobody knew his name until he committed to Nebraska for that matter. So I think that is intriguing to me that the son of Sam Cook is now going to be a scholarship punter at Nebraska.
Now, I haven't seen really many of these guys,
right.
Hardly any of them in person. But the one that I have seen was Jake Peters.
Okay.
Because he was at that
That's
camp.
what I was going to name.
You thought it was Tyson Terry.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like a guy.
That's what I was going to name. Why do you say that?
Well, he just had that. He had a Big Ten look to him. I mean, he looks like a guy that Iowa would get. An under the radar, no star recruit that ends up being an all Big Ten level player that in 3 or 4 years down the road. So immediate impact, might have to wait on that. But I think long term, he could be a guy to keep an eye on.
And he's from Cedar Falls.
Absolutely.
That's the one I'd say I'm most intrigued by, Peters, because of kind of what he said, the way he gets after you on tape. He's a very
just looks like one of those Big Ten, Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota offensive linemen.
Okay. Your dad, Rob, I'm going to send him to a game this year for us. Robin's dad lives in Cedar Falls.
You know what's funny? I was in Cedar Falls visiting my dad when Peters committed. I should have just drove over.
You could have wrote the whole trip
I could have had an in-person interview. Missed opportunity.
Right. Would have freaked him out. And maybe would have dissuaded him from coming here, actually.
Because
we did that once at
changing my commitment.
There was a receiver on a bowl trip in Orlando.
I remember that.
And ended up not coming, but he was committed. And we went to his house.
Oh boy.
Greg and I, and it wasn't like a really good situation. And he was guarded about letting, so we did the interview out near the street in the driveway.
That's okay.
We just did it and we left. It was
I'd be guarded too if two strangers showed up at my house.
And then about a month later, he switched to Auburn.
Sean cost him a recruit.
Yep, single-handedly.
All right, we have time for 2 quick ones. What do you have left, Grant?
Who has higher expectations going to next year? Will Bolt's team or Fred Hoiberg's?
Hoiberg. I mean, it's a do or die for them. They got to get not only to the postseason, they got to push for the NCAA tournament, and they have the roster to do it. They have the schedule to do it. I think it's all on the table right now, and I think everybody there knows it.
Yeah,
it's year 5. Mm-hmm. The time is now.
Yeah,
baseball just has got to figure out how to beat Summit League teams. I mean, they win those games during the middle of the week. They're probably in the tournament this year. I mean, their path to get back is not unattainable.
No, of course it's not.
It's manageable, and Will Bolton knows it, and Rob Childress knows it. I mean, they know what they're doing, and I think baseball is going to get. I mean, basketball is the one though that really intrigues me.
I think Grant would agree. Well, I don't.
Yes.
I don't.
No, I do.
Grant's mouth. But I guarantee you, Will Bolt would agree. There's no way the part of the plan was we're going to miss the NCAA tournament 2 straight years and be okay with it. No, it's not okay. There's nothing okay about it. So get in the NCAA tournament. And if you don't, I'm not drawing lines in the sand here, but if you don't, you got to really take a good look at it. I mean, 3 straight non-NCAA tournament seasons, that's not what anybody would have expected or signed up for.
Yeah, compare that to basketball, though. I think there's not even close to judging the pressure on both programs. It's all on basketball.
And that's a good pressure.
It is. That's where it should be.
Yeah, that's where it should be at Nebraska.
All right. Final question, Grant Hansen.
All right, we're in the middle of the CWS. What's your favorite memory of attending the CWS?
Well,
Okay.
I've got kind of a built-in advantage. I grew up in Omaha.
Omaha guy.
With season tickets.
Future mayor.
With season tickets. And I worked at Rosenblatt for my
Future
first
mayor.
job.
What did you do there in your first job?
Usher.
You were an usher.
Yes.
I'll be
The
damned.
late Stan Bennis, was in charge of all that stuff. And his daughter went to my high school. So a lot of Gross High kids worked at the stadium. And I mean, the job that everybody wanted was grounds crew, because you got all the gear, and you got to work like so many out. Like the grounds crew guys would stay the night,
Oh, is that right?
because to get the field ready to go. But I was in the stadium for the Warren Morris home run,
Okay.
the walk off to beat Miami. I mean, how can, and that game was a nationally televised winner take all championship game on CBS at noon on a Saturday. Beautiful baseball. And then honestly, I know the Nebraska people won't like me saying that, but when Creighton made it in 91, that changed the whole event. It really did. Because at that point, it was unthinkable for a Nebraska team to play in the CWS. Unthinkable.
Yeah.
And they not only got there, they were a hair's length away from getting to the championship and playing LSU. But I'll never forget the atmosphere for those Creighton games against Clemson. The first one they won when I believe it was Steve Hitton, the right fielder, made a catch in the rocks, and the place just blew up. They beat Clemson.
What was the guy's name?
Steve Hitton.
God dang, Sean.
They had a guy named Scott Stahoviak.
Freak memory.
Jim
Stahoviak was on that
Jim
team for
Hendry
sure.
was the coach.
Yeah, Jim Hendry was legendary.
Oh, Jim Henry, and he
went to the Cubs.
He lives in Omaha still to this day. And after they won that first game, he showed up to Paulie's Bar in Omaha in his uniform and celebrated and had drinks.
That's some Omaha. That's some serious.
Omaha that's history. Like Tom Chattel gold right there.
Yeah, that's serious Omaha history. That is serious Omaha history.
And Paulie's became legendary over the course of the series.
He went in his uniform.
Yes.
Jim Henry, who became, I think, the general manager of the Cubs.
Correct. And he's now the assistant to Brian Cashman for the Yankees. Lives on Shadow Ridge Golf Course. He watches my stuff on channels. I almost was like, God, Jim Henry knows who I am. He watches I grew up watching this guy,
legendary figure,
coach Creighton to the CWS, and but then they lost to Wichita State twice. Wichita State beat Creighton that year like 7 times. It was crazy.
I guess my memory would have been George W. Bush come up to the press box.
I shook his hand.
Yeah, he was. What year was that?
The 02?
Was it must have been the 02.
02.
It must have been the 02. But he was in the press box and I was writing. He was right behind me.
Was it post or pre 9/11?
Well, it was 02.
Yeah, it was pre.
It might have been 01.
Okay.
I think it was 01.
It had to be pre 9/11.
Yeah, it was the 01 series.
It had to be pre.
The first game that Nebraska played in the World Series.
Yeah.
Bush was there. I think that's how it played out, right?
That's probably my greatest memory. I hadn't thought about it, so I don't know. I haven't pinpointed the year, but whenever Bush was there, I thought it was extraordinary.
Mine has to be 2005 when Nebraska made it. I covered that team for the Daily Nebraskan, so it was kind of like the year-end culmination.
Alex
of the Alex
Gordon,
Gordon job,
Chamberlain.
and specifically when they beat Arizona State in the first round. Jabo just dominated, 5-3 win, and just the scene there, like how many Nebraska fans, they flooded that stadium. It was incredible.
Well, I
scene
get
in
the chills
Rosenblatt
right now.
Yeah, and they obviously lost their next two, but that moment on June 17th, 2005, to see Nebraska on that stage and get a win like that with Job on the mound, that was like the pinnacle of Nebraska.
I am
baseball.
literally getting chills right now thinking about it. I was there too. Who was on that team besides Job and Alex Gordon? Dunsing,
Johnny Dorn,
Joe Simakaitis, Jake Opitz.
Yeah, that's a crazy good
Daniel
team.
Bruce.
Yeah, that's a
Who
crazy
was he?
good
Jesse
team.
Boyer.
Jesse Boyer, center
Boyer.
fielder.
Good job.
Those guys had some fun back in the day.
I mean, but the big one was Alex.
They had a good
I mean,
time on
what
and off the
defined
field.
that team to me was Alex.
Oh yeah,
He was such
the
a
face.
rock.
He was
Yeah.
the face.
Oh,
And he was a rock. I mean, you knew Alex was going to be there.
there were
I mean,
pros on that team
Yeah.
up and down the roster.
Yeah.
Tony Watson.
Oh God, yeah, they had Watson. So they had,
Did you say Johnny Dorn already?
they had
Yeah.
Watson, Dorn, and Jabba,
Dorn was just
Dunsing?
a
And Dunsing.
freshman.
and Dunsing. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, Dorn was throwing like the midweek games against
Yeah.
South Dakota State.
Yeah.
A little different there.
Yeah,
It's just
that's a little different. Yeah,
Well, you want to talk about Nebraska's problem right now? They don't have a Johnny Dorn.
they don't even have a Johnny Dorn.
at all.
Midweek. I mean, Johnny was a midweek guy.
Like those were like guaranteed victories
Yeah.
when Johnny Dorn was on the mound against those little throwaway. Well, not
Are
throwaway.
you sure he
But
was midweek?
those mid. Well, he was their number 2 starter
as a
wasn't
freshman.
he? He
on that
eventually
team?
was.
Didn't they have Tony Watson on that team, and didn't they have Dunsing though?
They did have Watson.
I
and they
can't
had
remember
Dunsing.
what their.
He was
But
not.
I forgot what the
Johnny
rotation
Dorn was not.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Johnny Dorn was not ahead of Dunsing and Watson.
at any point.
Those three guys were all Major League Baseball pitchers.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Johnny Dorn never made the pros.
He was really good that year, though.
Well, he went on to be a really good Friday guy in the league, Saturday guy in the league. But as a freshman, I don't think he was the third guy.
Ridiculous talent, though. What we're talking about is a talent. I mean, that is ridiculous talent.
All right. Well, we could go a whole other segment on this. It was a lot of fun. Grant,
Yeah.
we appreciate you stepping in and
Good job, Grant.
gave you a little history lesson there.
Yeah, no, that was pretty cool. I think the history lessons, whether it be on something like this or Nebraska football, are probably the most underrated part of the podcast, to be honest. I think.
Wow,
This happens. You got a bunch of old guys.
that was a nice compliment, Grant.
Well, gentlemen, when we come back, we'll close the show with some basketball thoughts. A 7-footer visited campus. Robin Washut will give us the latest on that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut flashing back at talking some baseball. And Robin, you pulled up what? Okay, I was wrong on Tony Watson. And
He was on the team. He just wasn't part of their core rotation. It was Chamberlain, Dorn, and then Dunsing.
You think it was Job on Friday?
Yeah, Job was for sure the Friday.
Dunsing on Saturday.
I wouldn't say Dorn was their Saturday
Dorn
guy.
Saturday.
And then Dunsing
I
was
was
their
wrong.
Sunday guy.
Yeah, I was thinking Dorn.
Dorn was a third-team All-American
As a freshman,
as a freshman.
out of Grand Island, Nebraska.
He was the
He went
Saturday.
12-2.
Okay, we think he was the Saturday
I
guy.
believe so. And again, it might have fluctuated, given that he was a freshman. But
20 years ago.
20 years
Our-
ago, yeah.
close. to
Forgive my hazy memory here.
Right.
All right. Well, basketball, Robin, had a big week. Recruiting's kind of back rolling again. Coaches are bringing guys on campus. You reported the news of a 7-footer visiting campus this week, not for the next year, for this upcoming season as a 2023. What's the latest?
Yeah, transfer from Washington State. Pretty sure I have this right. Adrame Diongue.
Okay.
From
Senegal.
Yeah, from Senegal. And like I said, 7 foot, 7'6" wingspan, former 4-star recruit who was the number 75 player in the 2022 On3 consensus rankings. So a guy that comes with a lot of acclaim, even though he didn't do much during his true freshman year at Washington State. He played in 23 games, but only averaged 1.3 points, 1.8 rebounds, and only played 6.3 minutes per game. So a guy that just really never got it going at all up in Pullman. So he hits the transfer portal, and Nebraska was able to get his third official visit. He's seen San Jose State Tim Miles, and then New Mexico State. And so Nebraska's his third visit. And we'll see if he takes another one from here. I think that the issue with him is going to be, does he want to play right away and be a fixture in the lineup next season, or does he want to be a developmental guy? I think if he chooses the latter, he makes total sense for Nebraska. But he's not going to come to Nebraska next season and push for a starting job. He might not even push for a spot in the rotation, just given how raw he is. He's only been playing basketball, organized basketball, for 4 years. Kind of one of those guys that grew up playing soccer, and those NBA developmental camps out in Africa kind of found him, and he got going that way and kind of skyrocketed from there. So we'll see. I think Nebraska had a great visit with him. I think they laid it all out for how he would fit. He fits a role that Nebraska doesn't have on their roster, in that big, long, athletic, rim running big. They got their.
So you wouldn't say Blaze is that guy?
No,
Blaze Cade.
Blaze is not running the rim at all. No, he's a
This
back
guy,
he's a back to the basket
Okay.
traditional center. This is a guy that,
rim runner.
yeah, I mean, just freak athlete, which is why, despite being so raw, was so highly regarded coming out of Arizona Compass, coming out of high school. So to be determined on that, but definitely one to watch. But again, I think it's ultimately going to come down to what he wants his role to be at his next stop. Does he want to be immediate impact? If so, then he's probably not coming to Nebraska.
Yeah, New Mexico State would be very curious to me if you would choose a program that ended its season prematurely last year because they had a big legal issue.
They're a mess.
Yeah, they were a mess. And if you read it, I wouldn't even read it out loud. It was a mess.
Was Teddy Allen still playing for
No.
them last year?
No, he was long
finally
gone.
done.
No, Rob. No, Sean, he was long gone. Well, he was long gone.
No, the year before he played.
Was it the year before? But he was gone. He wasn't there last year. I can tell you that.
Maybe he found another waiver to keep playing.
But this guy's interesting to me because you don't need him to score. That's for sure.
Yeah,
You gotta
and defense is kind of his thing. When you're that long, you're
Yeah.
going to block a lot of shots. And so
you can run like that.
he gives them the offensive athleticism
Yeah.
to get to the rim, perfect lob guy, that type of thing. But then defensively, that's where he kind of hangs his hat. There's a quote from him that On Three's Jamie Shaw got after he committed to Washington State, where he says, "I run the floor well, grab rebounds, and block everything." He says he watches a ton of Kevin Garnett. So
Okay.
that's the ideal picture of what he thinks he could be.
Robin, 2025 in-state, obviously Nebraska was quick on what appears to be the top names now in the state. A lot of these guys, though, are blowing up for 2025.
Yeah, Mari Bynum from Omaha Bryan is maybe one of the most coveted prospects in the state right now. He picked up Iowa State, Iowa,
Creighton.
Wake Forest, Creighton. Nebraska was his first offer, though. So credit to Nate Lenzer, who's basically handling Nebraska's in-state recruiting, for getting out on that one. Same thing with Brendan Frager from Lincoln Southwest. He's also picked up some. I think he got Iowa and Creighton as well shortly after Nebraska was his first offer. So, for all the knock over the years about how Nebraska hates recruiting in-state players and all that stuff, that narrative has changed in a big way to where they are out in front of everybody.
Really?
And these kids that are emerging into high-level prospects. So 25, there's some talk that the 25 class might rival 21. That year with Hunter and Chucky Hepburn and all those guys, that it might be a better class top to bottom than what the 21 class was. And that's not even to mention Chuck Love, who is going to be playing at Northeast this year.
So he's at Lincoln Northeast.
Yeah, he transferred.
Oh, he transferred.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, they were my old. That's quite a drive from where I used to live.
And here's an
They're my
interesting
old neighbors.
interesting nugget that they this past week was the first point where coaches could contact 25 recruits, like call them and do all that sort of thing. Nebraska did not contact Chuck Love Jr.
Did any other players transferred to Northeast in the city?
Not that I know of. I mean, I can't say one way or the other, but I know that was.
I wonder why.
Yeah, you think about a team with Frager and Love, two major recruits, why you wouldn't want to kind of keep that band together.
Yeah.
One ball.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. I think that's probably what it comes down to, where, there's no sharing going on over there now. So we'll see.
It's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of athletic team. You got Jabba Chamberlain's son on that team. You got Tim Carpenter's son.
What's
Southwest.
Carter Chamberlain.
I know, but what
Southwest.
Lincoln Southwest.
Okay.
Timmy Carpenter's boy Jackson. I mean, there's some athletic talent at Lincoln Southwest right now. They got a lot of.
That was just a theory, by the way. The one ball. I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Chuck
So-
Love Jr. is a high volume. I mean,
Yeah.
what was the guy that was at North Star a couple years ago?
Donovan Williams.
He's going to be like that kind of player, right? Where he's going to take 20 plus shots every
but
game.
He's blowing up in his own right. Like, so he's going to have plenty of high major options to choose from. But it looks like, some questions if Nebraska would recruit him, considering the fallout that his father had at Nebraska. And it seems like there's not much movement going on.
So all these top Nebraska kids, they're playing for Mocan on the EYBL for the most part.
Yeah.
Is Frager on the local team though, or is he on the Mocan team?
So they rotate a lot, but yes. So the Supreme program is still getting some of them in various tournaments, but they fluctuate. Let's say that.
But Mocan's kind of has that's the Kansas City area Nike EYBL
so
team.
Bynum's on there for sure.
Love.
And then Love. I think Frager too. And then there's the ETG program. So anyway, I know we're short on time here with Nebraska's recruiting. So they have 2 open scholarships, obviously.
Yes,
Deonge,
this season.
it was one official visitor. There was some rumblings that Paul McCahey, the Rutgers transfer, Nebraska held multiple Zoom meetings with him. He narrowed down his final 4. Nebraska didn't make the cut. So turn the page on that one. And so now we're just kind of waiting and seeing. I do know that Nebraska is not feeling any rush to fill these spots. Even with the Spain trip looming, they're not going to just take a guy. They're still waiting to see if some guys could graduate and become immediate eligible grad transfers. So still plenty of time for those 2 spots to be filled, and Nebraska is not going to panic.
All right, lots to keep up on. Thank you, Robin, for that great breakdown of Husker basketball. Make sure you're on HuskerOnline.com. It's going to be a very busy weekend of recruiting coverage. For Steve Sipple, Robin Washut, I'm Sean Callahan.